what you gonna do when a
Blood Bowl
mania run wild on you?
Welcome. The Chaos Gods are capricious, evil deities that use their subjects as pawns in their twisted game. But when it comes to Blood Bowl, nobody is above Nuffle. Not even the Chaos Gods. To note that we are not sure of the nature of Nuffle. Is he a Chaos God or a normal God? Is he a wrathful or uncaring God? And those are questions that we might never learn. Luckily, those are questions we, and the worshippers of Chaos, do not have to ask. For Chaos has a very clear nature, to bestow boons upon the most deserving of Blood Bowl players. You would be surprised to find out that there are a lot of Chaos teams in Blood Bowl, and we'll be looking at a few of them, and some of their star players. Before we get into the teams, it's important to learn a little about the culture that Chaos worshippers have in Blood Bowl. You might expect them to not be so keen on it, seeing how Nuffle's worship weakens their god's power. But it would be wrong. They love it. The violence and the glory they can bring to their gods. If Blood Bowl is loved all over the world, none love it more than Chaos worshippers. Some might wonder if this comes from the love of violence on and off pitch, or the colors. Nevertheless, they love it. And from this love of Blood Bowl, we have two archetypes. First, the Chaos Chosen. Teams of Chaos Chosen are usually formed from beastmen, alongside superhuman chosen and mighty but blood-crazed minotaurs. As you can expect, this kind of teams sometimes lose sight of the ball and focus entirely on destroying the opposing team, until they become one with grass, because that's what happens. Of course, all in the name of the ruinous powers they serve. The second archetype is the Chaos Renegades. Teams that Blood Bowl fans can't get enough of. Mostly because they are all made from the scum of the scum. From time to time, Chaos Renegades teams have occasional marauders or thugs from the north. But those are exceptions because these teams are made mostly out of outcasts. Players that have fallen out of favor with their teams. Maybe they cheated too much and got caught too much, or wasted the team's money with the head cheerleader. At some point, everybody gets tired of the locker room cancer, and these players find themselves with no teams to play for. So they band together to make teams that are barely held together thanks to a mutual love of violence and money. These teams are made out of humans, mostly, but don't be surprised to see orcs, goblins, skaven, or even dark elves among them. If they can afford it, they are also joined by trolls, minotaurs, and ogres. As you can see, they form a pretty diverse and progressive teams, to the nightmare of those scribes that have to categorize them. These teams often attract the attention of the Chaos Gods, and so they get blessed as much as you can presume, whether the player wants the gift or not. Because of that, these teams are filled with different kinds of mutations, and Blood Bowl fans, they love it. Because no two Chaos Renegades teams are alike. But what the fans love, well, coaches and sponsors hate. So you can probably imagine that such teams don't really see much success. Their own selfish nature doesn't help with that, as each player would rather do a failed mad dash to the end zone than pass the ball. That and the mutations ensure that teams don't really get the proper spot in the sunlight they would love, despite what the fans think, of course. But don't worry, there is one exception to this, one team that managed to reach incredible heights, and we'll be talking about them soon. Now that we have established how Chaos teams are divided and the culture around them, let's look at some notable teams. First, we will start with the Chaos Chosen team, known as the Doom Lords, who wear black and red, but don't worry, it's not only Khorne they worship. They were founded in 2486, and they have won one Chaos Cup in 2493. Yes, numbers are hard for me. One Orchidas Cup in 2487, and one Timbo Cup in 2492. This team has produced in total 3 Hall of Famers, to the delight of their own owner, the Overfiend of the Lead Citadel. They may worship corn after all. Nevertheless, the team debuted in 2486, and for 2 years the owner spent a lot of money to get the best players he could, even getting the expensive coach, Henry the Idolator. The Overfiend had an extensive and vigorous training process, especially in its selections of players. And, least we not forget, their cheerleaders. Because what is a game of Blood Bowl without cheerleaders, right? In 2489, the collapse of Naf happened. And while many suffered a great deal from it, the Doomlords were relatively unscathed from it, all thanks to the Overfiend's business. In the disorder that befell the Naf, the team of Chaos Chosen entered small and independent tournaments. They would miss on the Chaos Cup qualifying match in 92, but during the same year they won the Timbo Cup, defeating 15 halfling teams. The following year they would win the Chaos Cup, and end the season with a 19-1 record. A most impressive feat for a team so young. But that comes with a drawback that the Doomlords don't have star players. Just yet. In time, that might and will surely change. Next on our list is a mixed team of Chaos Renegades, the Mongrel Horde. A well-known team despite its performances. Their owner is Fergus Alexson, and their coach is Alexander Ferguson. The joke is so obvious. With this one, even the Polish could figure it out. Going back, this team managed to have 3 Hall of Famers, surprising everybody. Seems they let any player, that left the game into the Hall of Fame. Whatever. They have managed to win, to the complete shock of everybody, the Hell's Mouth League twice, and are the runner-ups for the Border Princes Senior Cup. This team managed to live for 4 decades, playing in leagues and tournaments around and in the Empire. When they first debuted, this team was a hit with the fans, and it had all the reasons to be. It was a team formed out of violent thugs that could barely be called players. That not only hated each other, but never bothered to train. As you can expect, their matches were worth seeing back in the day. But such gimmicks, they grow old pretty fast. Especially when the players lack the dedication of at least putting up a performance for the fans. So, the big numbers that came out to see them dwindled more and more. As I've mentioned before, their lack of dedication didn't help either. For what is the purpose of coming to see a match if your favorite team lacks more than half of its roster because they couldn't be bothered to play that day? Some players even refused to play if a hated teammate was in the game, or they played only against certain opponents, we can presume halflings, or refused to play others outright. And this whole thing was entertaining for a while, but it got pretty annoying because, in all honesty, they are a hard team to follow. They still play in the old world, don't get me wrong, they're still active, but if you plan to follow them, be prepared to have your hopes crushed. We can certainly say that Chaos Renegades teams are, teams of prima donnas who are kept back by their own chaotic and evil nature. But there's always an exception to the rule, and this exception is the Chaos All-Stars, a team whose owner, Prince Dorian of the Lost, has made dubious pacts that affect space-time continuum. How? The team was founded in 2402, but managed to win the Chaos Cup twice in a row, by the way, before they were created. But what's to Chaos Cups when you win it like 11 times. Add to that the AFC Championship 2 times, the Dungeon Bowl 3 times, the Spike Trophy and Blood Bowl once respectively. They have some pretty good track records. Yes, they are a pretty successful team. Sure, not like the Reichland Reavers, but when you consider they are a Chaos Renegade team, oh, they're not the exception for nothing. The missing of their owner with the time and, space itself will see them be transported 10 minutes into the future before they won the 5th Chaos Cup. But while it only was 10 minutes in real time, they traveled for 9 years. Yeah, that's a long time. And the sports writer with them even has a book that covers those events called 9 Years Knee Deep in Chaos. It's a good read. I really recommend it. The team would see its first and only Blood Bowl trophy in 2467 when they would win in the finals against the Shiretown Stuffers. In a controversial but hilarious maneuver, after winning, the Chaos All-Stars team would eat the Halflings. This of course started huge boycotts. Halfling teams and chefs threatened that they refused to work with the Chaos All-Stars. They were really pissed, but the fans found the whole ordeal funny, because it was. You would think their popularity would skyrocket like a Skaven experiment after this win, and amusing celebration, but it didn't, thanks to the NAF. You see, the stadium of the Chaos All-Stars was one that could shift through time and space, and the commissioners did not like that. So their stadium had to appear in real time for at least a week before a match. It also had to look like any other Blood Bowl stadium, which they had a cool stadium. Magic was also forbidden to only the NAF allowed spell repertoire. In all their glory, this team managed to only have 3 players in the Hall of Fame, and one of those is still an active player, but we'll get to him later. Next, we have a team whose owner is the chaos god of pus, decay, and horrible diseases, Nurgle's Rotters. Usually owners spend huge sums of money on their teams, but Nurgle just sends diseases out, and whoever survives, gets to join his Blood Bowl team. Would it really surprise anyone that this is how the team started? Rhetorical question. As you can expect, a team like this got into some controversy, once against the Nagaroth Nightwings because the Dark Elves were housed in a shrine of Nurgle, and more than half the team couldn't play. Some suspect it was intentional, while the team argues that it just happened. It was an accident. Another controversy was when they played against the Elfheim Eagles. Funnily enough, this time, the controversy was of no fault of their own, not of the Nurgle's Rotters. The Eagles used high magic to win the match. Both of these controversial matches happened in the finals of the Blood Bowl Cup, which they won it once, sure. The fall of Nuff hit them though, and hit them pretty hard. The team even got lost at sea once while traveling for a match. But years later, their bodies would be discovered by fishermen, and the team rebuilt anew, because the fishermen did not escape the embrace of Nurgle. Even the fisherman's cat, Timbo, turned into a rot spawn or something. Okay, now that we've talked about some Chaos teams, or the most important ones, let's look at some of their star players. And since we're talking about Nurgle's team, let's begin with Guffo Pusmaw, who used to be a catcher for the Nurgle's Rotters, but is now a free agent that plays for any Chaos Chosen team or Renegades team or Nurgle team. Before he got the gift of Nurgle, he was a no-name player in a no-name team that once traded jerseys with a Nurgle player. As you can expect, the mutation took place instantly, growing a gigantic maw where his stomach used to be. Using his maw and his long tongue, Guffo trained hard to become the best catcher out there. One advantage Pusmaw has is that, it's hard to take the ball from him when he holds it in his jaws. He will leave the Nurgle's Rotters because he got in a disagreement with Timbo, Yeah, the former cat that turned into a rot spawn. Oh well, it happens. Anyway, since we talked about Nurgle's star player, now let's look at the more angry side of the Chaos Gods. Scylla Anfigrim is a player for Norse in Chaos teams. So angry and destructive that there isn't a match where Khorne doesn't bless him with a mutation to continue his mayhem on the pitch. Now, his history is clouded in mystery, and the most accepted theory by historians is that he debuted as a blitzer for a Norse team. In his current mutated form, he debuted for Kron's Killers. Fans absolutely adore his style of play, and really, who could blame them? Officials have lost track of his kills and injuries record. And what they do know, at least of it, is that it's pretty high. Next, we'll be looking at a player that worships Kron's enemy, Slaanesh. And the player is Liudgrip Whiparm, who was a thrower for the Chaos All-Stars and even helped them win a Chaos Cup. Now he acts as a free agent to any Chaos team that wants to hire him. He has received acclaim thanks to his right arm, that is in fact a tentacle. And that makes him one of the best throwers in Blood Bowl. And all that for the low price of worshipping Slaanesh. The next star is one that is as easily recognized as a Liudgrip for a very interesting, distinctive feature. He has two heads. Wittergrass Doubledrool, who is also a free agent, but he did get to play for the Chaos All-Stars once before becoming a free agent, so that's good. This guy is a Turnskin, a beastman born to human parents. His life story is tragic because he was thrown out in the cold and left to die, until a group of friendly beastmen found him and adopted him, grooming him to become the best Blood Bowl player out there. Oh, one important feature that I forgot to mention about him is that in place of his left arm, he has 3 tentacles. They are not as good as Liudgrip's, but you can imagine with 3 heads and 3 tentacles, you can see how he is a quite frightening sight on the field. Okay, let's move on now to something more interesting. We've seen how the Chaos Gods bless their champions, but let's talk about Beastmen star players. One particularly, the biggest and toughest of all Minotaurs, Grashnak Blackhoof, known as the Great Black Bull. He plays for Chaos Chosen teams only, and if stories are to be believed, Grashnak was once a guard for the Hearthstone. But then he had a vision of Nuffle himself telling him to quit guarding the stone and start playing Blood Bowl in the most violent way possible. You can imagine that once Nuffle tells you to do something, to at least play Blood Bowl in this case, you have no choice in doing so. And so he did. He played in the most violent and spectacular way possible. What he left behind him on the pitch was a trail of carnage so big that he won multiple awards for it. Here's one example. He once tripped on a slope when playing against the Goblin team. So he got his revenge by stabbing every member of the Goblin team with his sharp horns. He once had a rivalry with an ogre about who's more deadly, and they will be equally matched until they met each other on the pitch. And the Great Black Bull proved his superiority. In 2498, he joined the Chaos All-Stars to win the Blood Bowl Cup of that year. Unfortunately, the All-Stars would lose in the semi-finals to the Skaven Scamblers. Grashnak didn't like that. He didn't like losing at all. So he started a post-match rampage that injured all the best players the Skaven team had, which later on meant that the Grudge Bearers would win the cup because the Skaven team, it was lacking, to say the least, in players. Such is the intensity and desire for violence and winning that the Great Black Bull has no limits. He would become a free agent later on, and while he wanted to win the Blood Bowl Cup, he had another goal to reach: to defeat Morgenthorg's record for the most fatalities in the history of the game. Speaking of Morgenthorg, he's a very special case, for you see, he's an ogre that played on all teams he could. But he is known for his tenure with the Chaos All-Stars, where he was the captain and helped the team win 2 Chaos Cups. Please do not forget, he's the only active player in the Hall of Fame. Yep, he's the guy I was mentioning. A feat which no one is sure how he achieved though. But if stories are to be believed, he managed to convince the commission that he should be allowed in, with just a lamp, 3 carrots, and a pencil sharpener. Moore became very popular with the fans even before he was the team captain of the Chaos All-Stars. His style of play was perfect for any Blood Bowl fan, not only those, of the Chaos worshipping kind. He does have the record for most fatalities in the history of the game. After the fall of Nuff, he became a free agent, the most expensive one you could buy. And he will play for any team, except those of the Necromancers, Undead, and Kemari variant. Since Ramu III admitted to wanting to assassinate the ogre during a match between the All-Stars and his team, so he refuses to play for them. And the last Chaos Star player we will look at is Lord Borak the Destroyer. The Uncle of Agony has the distinction of being the first captain of the first Chaos Chosen team, the first player to become a true celebrity, and the first player to sign a sponsorship deal. He debuted with the Swords of Chaos team, but that team will be, shortly lived because Tzeentch and his machinations turned the whole team into Chaos spawns, except Borak himself. That left him to become a free agent, and he was massively popular with the fans, thanks to his psychotic charisma and willingness to have an opinion about anything. Which is an interesting sight in a world like Blood Bowl, where concerns of most, are just limited to the games. Borak took sponsorship deals after sponsorship deals until his armor was filled with the logos from all the companies he worked with, which forced Nuff to implement rules that players had to, only wear armor in the color of their team. A sad sight, I understand. He was hired by Spike magazine to write a column in their weekly edition, which made his popularity surge beyond belief. The magazine was so happy with him, they hired him as an advice columnist. And during this time period, he also published his first self-help book, Lose Weight or Die Trying. Another good read I recommend, to be honest. By the year 2493, he has published 11 autobiographies and 21 self-help books. And he is still willing to play, for the right price. While he cannot claim any major trophies, some would say he has won more than any other player in Blood Bowl ever did when it comes to pure cash. And this has been a short and selective history of Chaos teams and their star players in Blood Bowl. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.